Every year, thousands of teens go missing, leaving behind families desperate for answers and communities left in shock. Behind every missing person's case is a story of a loved one lost, questions left unanswered, and a hope that never fades. Missing teens are not just a statistic, they are somebody's child, sibling, or friend. Let's bring their story to forefront and keep the hope alive. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the missing boys of Caledon. In the summer of 1981, 14-year-old Eric Larsfolk was no different than many kids his age. On August 24th, 1981, he was eating supper with his family. He was about to start his 10th year of school at Mayfield Secondary School in a few days. He also would have been celebrating his birthday soon after. He often thought about his friends in Fort Erie, Ontario, since it had only been a few weeks since the Larsfolk relocated to Caledon, Ontario. After he finished dinner, Eric drove his new bike down the driveway, heading towards a neighborly farm less than a kilometer away. He was going to visit his crush, Kim McCormick. Eric's father, Lloyd, watched his son speed away sometime after 6 p.m. When Eric got there, he discovered that she was gone babysitting for local neighbors. Kim had a 15-year-old brother named John Jr. that was there. But Eric barely knew him, and he had no way of knowing he would not be coming home that day. Nearly 40 years later, there is no consistent version of what happened during the next 5 hours. Eric's family hadn't been in the area long enough to know John Jr.'s dad, John McCormick Sr., but soon found out his reputation as a violent, paranoid alcoholic who loved guns. Allegedly, the OPP had reportedly been called out to their property on numerous occasions. The father, John McCormick Sr., kept a mini fridge beside his bed and drank from morning until night. His drinking fueled his violent temper towards John Jr., who irritated him, quote-unquote. Allegedly, John Jr. loved to drive the farm car around the property, and his dad would get so mad at him because he's ripping up grass and stuff. And considered by many, John Jr. was a troublemaker. Eric's brother, Dave Larsfolk, told news sources that Eric's personality didn't match with John Jr.'s personality, which makes the whole thing more bizarre. Dave can't remember the exact moment the McCormicks came into their lives, but he knows it was his younger sister who befriended Kim at some point during the summer. It was Dave, not Eric, who would eventually become friends with John Jr. sometime in mid-August. By then, Eric and Kim had already been acquainted. John Jr. had also spent most of his summer away. Earlier that summer, he had an explosive fight with his father, which some sources say resulted in John Jr.'s arm being broken. John Jr. had been sent to Virginia to recover with relatives for most of that summer. He returned on August 14th, a few weeks after Dave came to Caledon. During the 10 days that John Jr. was home, him and Dave had hung out a lot. Dave remembers sneaking inside the house with him to steal beer from John Sr.'s mini fridge. He remembers how the room was carpeted, walls and ceiling, and remembers driving a black Chevy field car with John Jr. He remembers vividly John Sr. standing on the balcony of the house, yelling at John Jr., and remembers how John Jr. flipped him off. According to John Jr.'s friend and neighbor, Dwayne Spears, he and John Jr. had been out late in Orangeville the night before he had disappeared. He says he was in shit for not doing his chores, so on August 24th, 1981, he wasn't allowed to go over to the McCormick's property. Dwayne refuses to say anything else about his childhood friend. Until the night that they vanished, Eric and John Jr. had never hung out alone together before. John came to the house to look for Dave, but he had left on Friday to spend the weekend with his friends in Fort Erie, and had decided on August 24th, 1981 to spend an extra night. He came to get me, and I wasn't there, so Eric went, says Dave. Lonely kids on a country road basically is all it was. Around 11 p.m., Lloyd Larsfolk, Eric's dad, was jolted by a frantic pounding on the door. It was Joyce McCormick, John and Kim's mother, who informed him the boys were missing. There was no trace of Eric or John Jr. anywhere. The only clue was John Jr.'s beat-up black Chevy farm car. It was discovered skidded to a stop, its hood and doors wide open, inside the gate to a gravel pathway at the edge of the field behind McCormick's house, which leads to the gravel pit behind it. The boys' bikes were found at the top of the driveway, leaning against the house. When Dave returned home from Fort Erie the next day, he joined the search party at the McCormick's farm. That's when he immediately noticed the car. He says John Jr. took pride in his cars. He had 6 or 8 of them, which he always kept neatly parked in the clearing between the field and the gravel pit. The car was out of place, but Dave knew exactly why the hood was open. Earlier that summer, Dave taught John Jr. how to start it. That was his favorite truck because it did run, but he didn't have any keys for it. They had been missing, says Dave. I had a dune buggy before when I lived in Fort Erie, and the only way to start it was to jump start it, because there was no ignition in the thing. So you would just attach the wires, and then you put a screwdriver between the 2 terminals of the starter, and it started. It made the starter work, and the engine would run. But starting this Chevy farm car was a 2-person job. When Dave saw it, the wires had been placed neatly on the driver's seat. And since then, no one has heard or seen from Eric or John Jr. Their case still remains a mystery to this day. In 2011, former journalist Andrew Livingstone wrote a series about the case in the Caledon Enterprise. He also spent time getting to know Eric's father, Lloyd, who is now in his 90s and at present is unable to confirm a certain information. Lloyd remembers Eric's willingness to help at the family's greenhouse business in Fort Erie before they lost it and had to move the family to Caledon. He talked about Eric's love for hockey, Scouts Canada, fishing on the Niagara River, and his eagerness to start school that fall. Lloyd shares his vivid memories of August 24th, 1981, crawling in the dirt and heavy blackness, looking for broken branches in the pine saplings that lined with the gravel pit. He was consumed by fear that someone had carried his boy away through the dense forest on the McCormick's 100-acre property. As chaos unfolded on that warm and cloudy August night, Larsfolk remembers how John McCormick Sr. sat in the house drinking beer on the couch. John Sr. told Lloyd that he had a friend over and that maybe the boys stowed away on the back of his pickup truck. He said the friend was headed out west. By all known accounts, McCormick's comment was the most significant contribute to the search, which was called off by the police shortly after midnight. A decade after he wrote the case, Livingstone says he is still consumed by the major red flags and gaps he might have overlooked. I really want to solve it, says Livingstone, wanting so badly to figure it out before Eric's father passes on. It can be detrimental at times, but I often wonder if I let my own biases get in the way. Thank you to everyone who took the time to watch and listen. It helps keep their story alive. Even decades later, the families and community deserve answers, closure, and justice. If you have any information, no matter how small, please contact Canadaunsolved.contact at gmail.com. Together, we can bring attention to the forgotten and ensure they're never truly lost. Stay safe, stay aware, and let's keep spreading hope. You can help by liking and sharing this video to help it reach more people, or by sharing links throughout your own research. Have a good day.